Okay, so you know how it is, right? You're just slammed with information constantly these days, but how do you even figure out what really matters? Well, that's kind of what we're doing here today, trying to make sense of it all. And today, we're going to be zeroing in on something pretty big for India's defense. Well, it's modernization efforts, I guess.
Yeah, big news.
Yeah, so yesterday, March 27th, 2025, the Ministry of Defense signed some big contracts, pretty substantial, Rs 2,500 crore worth.
Yeah, a lot of money being thrown around, and it's really focused on just two main things. One is this thing called the Name Fast Track version.
Oh, yeah, I saw some stuff about that.
Yeah, and then the second thing is just a huge order of 5,000 light vehicles, which might not sound quite as exciting as a new missile system or something.
Right.
But those vehicles are super important.
Logistically, yeah, makes sense. So basically, for you listening out there, our mission today is to unpack what these deals actually mean, right? Like, what do they give India in terms of new defense capabilities? And how does all this fit into this big push for India to be more self-reliant when it comes to defense? So we're going to try to break it all down without getting too bogged down in all the technical jargon and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's jump right in. And I think the most interesting thing here has got to be this NAMIS tracked version.
Yeah, definitely. So the NAMIS tracked version is also called Namica a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's this tracked anti-tank weapons system.
Okay.
And it was developed right here in India by the DRDL, which is the Defense Research and Development Laboratory. They're part of the DRDO.
Okay, yeah.
And what's really interesting about this Namica is that it's actually built on something pretty familiar.
Oh, really? So it's not built from the ground up. It's using some existing tech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're using the chassis of the BMP-2 Sarath infantry fighting vehicle. So the BMP-2, that's a pretty well-known platform, right? It's got great mobility, can handle different types of terrain, and it can even go in the water. It's amphibious.
Ah. So this new system is going to be pretty mobile then?
From the get-go, yeah. You've got this very mobile base for this very specialized anti-tank system.
Makes sense. So you said this is an anti-tank system, right? What exactly does the Namica have in terms of firepower?
Well, the weapon station on this thing is pretty impressive. It's designed to carry 6 NAG missiles ready to fire.
Okay.
And then it has space for 6 more, so that's a total of 12.
Wow.
Yeah, it can really keep going. And it also has a 7.62 millimeter machine gun that can be operated remotely.
Oh, so it's not just about taking out tanks. It has some self-defense capabilities too.
Exactly, yeah. It's a lot more versatile that way. And actually, this might ring a bell. Did you happen to catch the Republic Day parade back on January 26th, 2023?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they showed off the Namica there. It's kind of a way to show everyone that, hey, this thing's real, it's ready to go.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's been in development for a while.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier that the weapons station is modified. What did they change?
So with the Namica, they completely redesigned the weapon station to make it work specifically with the NAG missile system. So they took out the standard turret that you usually see on a BMP-2 and swapped it out with the system. So it's really focused on its anti-tank role. Now, to really understand what this thing can do, we need to talk about the NAG missile itself.
Right, yeah, the missile is what makes this whole system work.
Yeah, that's the real punch. So the NAG missile is a 3rd generation fire and forget anti-tank guided missile.
Okay.
Or ATGM for short. And that fire and forget part, that's really important. It gives you huge tactical advantage.
Okay.
First of all, let's talk about range. It can hit targets from 500 meters all the way out to 4 kilometers. So that covers both close range and medium range threats.
Wow, so it's got the distance covered. But how does it actually find and hit its target?
Well, it all comes down to the seeker. It uses something called an imaging infrared seeker, or IIR, and this is what makes it fire and forget. So basically, before the missile even launches, it locks onto the heat signature of the target.
Okay.
And because it's tracking heat, it can work in the daytime or at night, and even if the weather's bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Once it's locked on and fired, the operator doesn't have to do anything else. They can move on to other targets or just get the heck out of there. It really helps keep the launch platform safe.
So this is a really big step forward in terms of technology. What happens when that missile actually hits something? Like, what kind of damage are we talking about here?
Well, it's got this tandem high explosive anti-tank warhead, or HEAT for short. And the tandem part, that's key because it lets it take on modern tanks. So it's got 2 charges, basically.
Okay.
The first one's smaller, and it goes off first. You can think of it as clearing the way. It takes out the explosive reactive armor, or ERA, which a lot of modern tanks use as a first line of defense.
Yep.
Then the second charge goes off the bigger one, And that's what punches through the main armor of the tank. We're talking about the potential to get through 800 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor equivalent, or RHAE. So basically, it can probably take out most modern tanks.
Wow, that's intense. So it's built to overcome multiple layers of defense, and I heard it can attack in different ways, too.
Yeah, so it's got two main attack modes. One is called top attack. So with this one, the missile goes up really fast after it launches.
Okay.
It kind of hangs out up there for a bit, and then it dives down onto the target.
Oh, wow.
And that's super effective because the top armor on a tank is usually the weakest part. It's like going for the Achilles heel.
Right.
The other mode is called direct attack. And with this one, the missile just flies straight at the target at a lower altitude and hits it head on.
Got it. So that top attack mode sounds like it could really exploit a tank's weaknesses. This is some pretty advanced tech.
Yeah.
But is the missile itself actually like physically large?
It's actually pretty compact. It's about 1.8 meters long. The diameter is a little less than 16 centimeters. And the whole thing weighs somewhere between 42 and 44 kilograms. So it's definitely manageable for a vehicle-mounted system like Namica.
Yeah, that is pretty small when you think about what it can do. What about how it flies? Like what gives it its speed and how does it stay on course?
So it uses this high-energy nitrogen-based extruded double-base smokeless sustainer propellant, and it has a booster motor that gives it that initial push.
Okay.
And that propellant, it's pretty advanced, helps it get to its target quickly and efficiently. And then it's got this really sophisticated digital autopilot system that helps it stay on track and make any adjustments it needs to hit the target. And then it's also got 4 wings and some tail fins that fold out after launch.
Okay.
And those help stabilize it while it's in the air.
So we've got this really powerful missile, and it's mounted on this super mobile platform. I'm curious to see how it all works in a real situation, from spotting the enemy to taking him out.
Okay, so let's walk through it. First, you got to find the target. The Namica vehicle has all these high-tech sighting systems, things like thermal imaging and laser rangefinders.
Yeah.
And these help the crew spot and identify enemy tanks, even if the visibility is bad. Once they've found their target, the IIR seeker on the NAG missile locks onto the target's heat signature. And this is important. This happens before the missile is even launched. So that's the lock-on before launch thing. That's what makes it fire and forget.
Got it. So once the missile's in the air, the operators are free to do other things right.
Exactly. They can focus on other threats, or they can move the vehicle to a safer position. So after launch, the missile just guides itself to the target. The IIR seeker is constantly tracking that heat signature, and the autopilot is making little adjustments to the flight path to make sure it hits its mark.
And then boom.
Yeah, and we already talked about the warhead, how that's designed to really take out even those heavily armored tanks. That precursor charge takes out the ERA, and then the main charge punches through the main armor. So after that initial lock-on and launch, the system pretty much does its own thing. So the crew can focus on other things and stay safer.
This fire and forget capability is a real game changer on the battlefield. Now let's talk about the other part of this deal, the 5,000 light vehicles. Now, those may not be as flashy as a new missile system, but I imagine they're really important for supporting everything else that's going on.
Absolutely. So you've got Namica with the NAG missile. That's your direct anti-tank firepower. And then you've got these light vehicles. They're the workhorses for logistics and mobility. And these contracts were split between 2 major Indian manufacturers, Force Motors Limited and Mahindra Limited.
Great. And what will these vehicles do for the Indian Army? What are their capabilities?
They can carry a lot of weight, up to 800 kilograms, and they've got upgraded engines so they can handle all sorts of tough terrain. Their main purpose is to give the armed forces a lot more flexibility.
Okay.
They'll be moving personnel, supplies, equipment, all that stuff in day-to-day situations and during actual combat. So you can think of them as the logistical backbone that lets you use these advanced systems like Namica effectively. And when you've got 5,000 of these vehicles, it tells you that India is really serious about having a distributed logistics system and being able to move things around quickly over a large area. This could really reduce their reliance on those big, vulnerable transport vehicles.
Yeah, it really shows you how all these different pieces of military equipment have to work together. Stepping back a bit, how do these contracts fit into India's bigger goals? Especially this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, the Self-reliant India thing.
Well, this is Atmanirbhar Bharat in action right here in the defense sector. By investing in a homegrown system like Namica, and by working with Indian companies to build these light vehicles on a large scale, India is taking steps to be less dependent on foreign arms suppliers. You remember back in 2020 when they had to buy those Spike anti-tank missiles from Israel in a hurry?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they had a capability gap and they needed to fill it fast, so they had to rely on foreign tech. Developing things here at home, that's how they're going to avoid situations like that in the future. They want to build a more self-sufficient defense ecosystem.
So it's not just about buying cool new weapons. It's about having the ability to design, build, and manufacture all that stuff right here in India.
Exactly. That not only makes India more secure because they know they'll have a steady supply of the equipment they need, it also really boosts India's domestic defense industry. It creates jobs in manufacturing and lots of other indirect jobs too, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. And it's interesting to see how this is all coming together. You've got Namica being produced by a government-owned company, armored vehicles, Nigam Limited AV&L.
Right.
But they're working with private companies to build different parts of it. And then you've got these big private companies supplying the light vehicles. It's a real national team effort.
It sounds like a real push to create a strong and independent defense industry in India.
Yeah.
And the NAG missile program that's been going on for a while now, right?
Yeah, the AN missile went through lots of trials back in 2019 and 2020.
Okay.
And it did really well, proved itself. And they've been upgrading it and making it even better. Like in 2025, they came out with the NAG MK2 variant. So India is really committed to innovation in this area. And strategically, the NAG missile is a great alternative to other anti-tank systems out there. Things like the U.S. Javelin or the Israeli Spike.
Right.
But it's made here and it's cost effective. And as we talked about before, when you combine the NAG with Namica's tracked mobility and that remotely operated turret, you've got something that gives mechanized infantry a real edge in combat.
Looking ahead, is there more to come with this technology, or is this the final product?
Oh, no, this is just the beginning. There's already talk about using this technology with other systems that DRDO is developing here in India. Like take Helena, for example. That's the helicopter launch version of the NAG missile, and it has a much longer range, like 7 to 8 kilometers. This tells you that India's got this bigger plan for a whole family of anti-tank missiles that they can use on different platforms and in different situations. So there's definitely more to come in terms of advancements and taking a really comprehensive approach to anti-tank warfare.
So these contracts that were signed on March 27, 2025, they're a pretty big deal for India's defense capabilities.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Acquiring the NAMIS tracked version with that advanced NAG missile that gives them some serious anti-tank firepower, and then getting 5,000 of those light vehicles, that's going to make the Indian Army much more mobile and efficient.
So at the end of the day, this is about giving the Indian Army the tools they need to handle the security challenges they're facing now and the ones they'll face in the future. And it's also about India being more independent when it comes to defense through innovation.
Yeah, it's a win-win. They're strengthening their combat capabilities, and they're building a homegrown defense industry that's sustainable and independent.
Well, this has been a really fascinating look at these new defense contracts. You really start to see the bigger picture when you look at the details.
Totally. It gives you a glimpse into how India is preparing for the future of defense.
So to all of you listening out there, after hearing about India's latest moves in defense tech, what other areas do you think could benefit from this kind of focus on developing things here at home and making strategic investments?
Yeah, it really makes you think about how important self-reliance is for national security and for the economy as a whole.
Definitely.
It's a big question to ponder.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
All right.